All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 389. Men's humanity still terrorizes feminists, terrifies feminists, and all of that jazz. I wrote the title and I couldn't even remember it. That's pretty bad. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks, and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson, with our guest Richard back to talk about another article that is going to piss you the fuck off, and Brian Martinez working in the background to make things happen that I still haven't taken the time to educate myself on, and of course, obviously, it's because I'm a girl. Now, I just haven't taken any time off from work in the last forever, really, since ICMI 2019. Actually, I haven't taken any time off from work that didn't involve me being squatted to the hospital. So there you go. But in any case, we have an interesting show tonight. The article we're going to be looking at, this title, I think, is the title of the documentary that the article is about. And it is yet another article by a woman about incels, because nobody is as much of an expert on men and their thoughts and their feelings and their behaviors than some chick, right? But before we get into that, we got to do what we got to do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions. And boy, are we going to provoke the hell out of the thoughts tonight. As experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated that provoked thoughts are fighting back, they've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justatip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page when we're not being DDoSed by angry feminists. That hasn't happened in a few months, but it has happened frequently. But with all of that out of the way, let's get into the meat of the article. So, usually guys get called meathead, but I think it's appropriate for this chick. She doesn't push back at all, I don't think, on the idea that there are guys who are in incel forums, lots of guys who are in incel forums simply because they are lonely. They are tired of being kicked when they're down, and they want to have friends that they can talk to about their experiences and maybe assess them together. And that's it. So her first line pretty much tells you how this article is going to be. Some men hate women, and some go online to talk about it.
Are we not going to address the title?
The incel trap?
There's jokes to be made there.
Yes.
I know they're obvious jokes.
Does that constitute gaming?
Can a trap be an incel? I mean, this is a crossover that we don't often hear.
There's the incel to trans pipeline.
Well, a lot of traps are incels.
That is true.
That
Yeah.
ought to be brought up, especially if they become traps long before they have any chance to engage in a sex life. And once they've butterflied their genitals, they're unlikely to ever really technically lose their virginity. So is anyone going to talk about that? Is anyone going to talk about people who go up and shoot up 9 Canadians because they're not just traps but incels? Nah, let's not. Let's avoid that particular subject for now, shall we?
Call the thought police. No, the sad thing is they don't want to talk about that. This lady, this Emily Lawford, sorry, she doesn't want to talk about that. The creator of the documentary doesn't want to talk about that because that does not make women the victims of the feelings of men. We hear all the time from feminists that the male suicide epidemic, which is a thing, even if they say that it's not, is caused by, quote, toxic masculinity, in that men don't talk about their feelings, right? What happens when men talk about their feelings? You get this documentary and this article and many others like them, where they start
your mom
out.
tells everybody.
Or your mom tells
your mom
everybody.
tells everybody your problem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Or your wife leaves you because you said it hurts when she treats you like shit. Right? Or because you said you have anxiety. Like only women are allowed to have anxiety, right? Or because you said you're depressed. People get mad about that. So there we go. But yeah, the incel trap. Because of course, guys get recruited to be involuntary at something. They go out and find other guys and ask them to involuntarily start doing the thing. That is so common that we hear about it all the time. Involuntary recruiting. And of course,
Don't recruit.
well, you can't. It's not possible. You can't talk people into involuntarily doing something. The minute that they volunteer, it's no longer involuntary. Right? That seems to be pretty straightforward. Do these people not know what involuntary means? Do they think that guys just choose to involuntarily do things? Maybe it's one of those people that confuses bulimia and the flu or something like that. Yeah, press ganging, Shadow Wolf. That would be how most countries recruited for military service before a certain era of freedom and prosperity. You basically just got press ganged. They'd come and get you, and you were in the military, especially the Navy, because it's very hard to go AWOL if you're out on the ocean. You can't just when you're miles away from the shore, you can't just jump ship and survive. Right? You jump ship, you didn't go AWOL, you committed suicide. So maybe armies were less able to do this, right? Maybe especially the frontliners were less able to do this, although not too much because they had weapons. But when it comes to naval fleets, when humans started creating boats and using them to attack each other, they started press ganging men into serving as soldiers on those boats, whether they were small or large, fat or thin, long or short. That was just a fact of life for men. But you can't get press ganged into being an incel either. Only ignored into being an incel. Only abandoned into being an incel. Right? Only looked down on into being an incel. Right? Only mistreated into being an incel. Abused into being an incel. You really can't get a big group of people grabbing you and forcing you into the incel club. It's, in fact, the polar opposite.
I mean, it's literally called involuntary.
Yeah.
I mean, you get much more direct than that. It's you can't actually be held accountable for what is literally involuntary. But that's what people mean by incel. That's what the in is short for in incel. It means involuntary. But people will these vast swathes of especially feminists and now the general normie sphere, who will call you some kind of terrorist for something that is quite literally involuntary, and they think that's fine. And meanwhile, they're excusing criminals for their criminal behavior. And they're like, no, it's not their fault that they're criminals. They've been driven into this by, I don't know, incels. It must be the fault of people who are involuntarily marginalized, that people who have been voluntarily marginalized by being criminals, that's the only reason they're having problems. And it's all a bit skew-whiff, isn't it? It's all a bit fucking upside down. That the worst people we can think of are people who are in their situation involuntarily. Like, how does anyone justify this? I mean, we know because they just fucking hate men, and that's all it is to it. It's easier to hate men because of the things they do involuntarily than it is to hate them for things they do voluntarily. I mean, there's nothing women hate more than a man with no power. And again, that's what involuntary means. It's a man with no power. But the more power they drain away from men, the more they hate men for not having that power. And it's a downward spiral. Like the more we fuck you over, the more we will fuck you over, and we will keep doing this relentlessly because we're so full of love, because we're so full of empathy. I can't even odd. Yes.
There we go. You know, that catchphrase that she put at the top, that catch line, angry and lonely young men can easily enter a web of hatred against women online. Is there a way out? Don't be hateful toward them. And then they won't be lonely and they won't be angry about it. But you think about this. Let's start from the perspective of this statement on hatred. Some men hate women and some go online to talk about it. I mean, the hashtag kill all men, which feminists like to tell us is a joke, is a statement that feminists and gynocentric women make because they are mad at men for the crime of not being identical to women. That is basically the underlying logic behind hashtag kill all men. Feminism contains a whole spectrum of language that is made specifically to delegitimize men's existence, men's feelings, men's thoughts and opinions, men's observations, right? Men's boundaries, men taking up any amount of space at all in the world, men's successes. Like they have a word for every thing about existence that can happen to men or that men can do that delegitimizes it or makes it into an attack on women, right? Everything that exists about masculinity, feminists hate. And women have a consistent habit of just treating men's interests and men's characteristics that make them successful. Accountability, courage, the level of stoicism it takes to bypass your sensibilities in order to achieve a goal that's important to you. Right? Yes, my knee hurts, but I'm going to finish this race. Or, yes, my knee hurts, but I'm going to finish building this road. I'm going to finish fixing this toilet. I'm going to finish making sure that this power line is properly attached so that electricity will get to people's homes. I'm going to finish breaking up this fatberg. I'm going to put this light bulb in this 1,200-foot tower so that planes don't hit it and people can still have their radio signals. Men overcome things that women just don't bother to deal with. I'm going to clean up all of this blood at this crime scene. I'm going to take pictures of this mutilated body at this crime scene so that there's evidence that can convict the killer or help to convict the killer. You don't see a lot of women going into gastroenterology. It's a shitty job. But then they complain that pediatricians don't make as much money as the guy whose job involves investigating the part of your body that shit comes from. You know, the part of your body that vomit comes from. It's very clear that if this guy makes a mistake while he's shoving a camera up your ass, he can kill you by perforating the part of your body that can spill shit into your abdomen and cause peritonitis. But, you know, maybe putting a baby on a scale should get paid the same amount of money because reasons, right? Women get mad when men receive merit pay for doing things that have more merit than the job the woman is doing, or that have more adverse conditions applied to the job that make it reasonable to pay somebody more in order to make it persuasive. Please come do this job. Well, I'd rather do this other job. It's easier and it doesn't have as many difficulties. Well, we'll pay you more money. Okay, I'll do this job. How dare you make more money? Right? But men hate women. That's the claim at the beginning of the article. The big question that I have is, what is that hatred? What is this woman defining as hatred? Right? Is it a desire to prevent women from existing? Is it a hashtag kill all women? Is it a treatment of women as not permissible? You can't come in here because you're a woman. You're dangerous to the people around you. You're scary because you're a woman. You're automatically presumed creepy and guilty of something because you're a woman. Nobody does that. Nobody says, I'm afraid of getting raped because there's a woman in here. Even though women are just as likely to perpetrate as men, possibly more, because they feel entitled and they don't think that their sexuality can be an imposition, even if the other person says no. Even though women can be just as violent as men, women can use weapons, women can use guns, and even like that chick that used a machete to try to, well, she did rape her boyfriend. We hear nobody ever say, I'm afraid of getting beaten up, killed, robbed, conned out of everything because there's a woman in this room with us. They don't do that. They don't do that because they don't recognize that women can be just as dangerous, and they don't generalize the women who are just as dangerous to the rest of us who don't want jack or shit to do with violence.
Well, to play devil's advocate, there has recently been people have looked into this idea that women should not be prison officers in men's prisons, and that is a very good point. Largely because those women very often tend to be predatory, and those of us in Honey Badger Radio talk about it in terms of how they are predatory, but a lot of other folks say this shit because those women are putting themselves in danger, and yes, they are, even though largely they're not, because even convicts, even male convicts, are generally quite
Gyocentric,
and dare I say empathetic. I know we like to say women are the empathetic sex, but when even convicted convicts, even violent convicted convicts, is it a tautology? But even male convicts are quite happy to be statutorily raped by women without exacting their violent tendencies on them, because they know what's going to happen if they do that. They're going to put into solitary confinement and stuff, and because prison officers have all the power, even if they're women, nay, especially if they're women. But that's none of this is the same as this idea that women that men should never be in charge of children. And this is another thing I've seen working the rounds on Twitter recently, because recently there was a male guy who some kind of nursery operative who committed some kind of atrocity, and since then this idea that men should never be in charge of children in a professional capacity has reared its ugly head. Like, why would any man want to be in charge of children unless it's so he can rape them? And I can see where you're coming from, because we live in an age where so many people have had their priorities and their sense of morality skewed in all sorts of directions. But for most of history, the professionals in charge of children have been male and female, and we didn't have these kinds of problems. Well, we did have these kinds of problems, but they were generally vetted to make sure that we didn't admit too many nonces into the charge of children. But this,
well, you also had the threat of consequences. You know, if the adult got outed for behaving that way, the adult didn't just get moved on to another school. And in particular, if the adult was male, then the adult basically got lynched or beaten to death by the men of the community, because most men are very protective of children. Very protective. You get a whole room full of men together, and you tell that room full of men that outside of the room there is a child molester. They're going to be ready to leave the room and kill that child molester. They're going to assume that child molester, unfortunately, they're going to assume that's another guy. And if they walk out and it's a woman, half the time they don't know what to do. But they will still want to apply consequences.
And this makes it very difficult for a man to enter into childcare. Even if, I mean, especially if he's not a nonce, because he can be subjected to false accusations. Yeah. And in the event that he's subjected to these false accusations, his life will be on the line. In the old days, because he could get lynched, and in the current days, because he could get the modern equivalent of being lynched, both in the court of public opinion and in the literal courts. And to be honest, that, if anything, is the reason men shouldn't go into childcare. Not because they're likely to rape children, but because they are far, far more likely to be falsely accused of raping children. And that is what I will tell men. Yeah, you probably shouldn't go into childcare. Not because I think you're a nonce, but because I think you're very likely to be accused of being a nonce, because we live in an extremely misandric age. But compare that with the female prison officers thing. People are saying women shouldn't be female prison officers, not because they're predators, but because they're likely to be putting themselves in danger. But people are saying men shouldn't be in charge of children, not because they're putting themselves in danger, but because they're putting other people in danger. And that's the way it is across the board. Like the only reason men are being marginalized and expelled from these sectors of employment and from these entire sectors of community, from these entire sectors of civilization, is because they are assumed to be predators. And the only reason, or at least the primary reason, anyone even considers marginalizing or rejecting women from any sectors is because they are endangering themselves. And I put it to you,
in circumstances where they're predatory.
Yeah, people are just missing out the idea that women can be predators and that men can be predated upon.
As a man in the UK, you can't sit in a park and read a book without people staring at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the US, there have been men who have taken their own children to a park to play and been assaulted by other people in the park for trying to kidnap their own children or for being predators without any evidence, literally no evidence, just they were there and there were children there, and a man who was there must be there for nefarious reasons because men have been so demonized.
Mike, do you remember the early 2000s pedophile hysteria?
I mean, the pedophile hysteria has been around since long. Oh, you mean Brass Eye?
Yeah.
There was this classic British
monkey dust as well.
I remember Monkey Dust, the pedofinder general. Yeah.
Yeah.
My gosh.
That this was all satire, but people were wising up to this notion of I say men being falsely accused of pedophilia, but it was called people being falsely accused of pedophilia. But yeah, people got onto this shit like 30 years ago.
Yeah,
that the media, especially back then, was because you know how the news media works. They always try to sell moral panics to the public in order to get eyes on them. And yes, this did include like very much overhyping the moral panic of specifically male pedophiles. And it's difficult to talk about this without being called a pedo apologist or a pedo defender or something. But yes, there are both sides to everything. Yes, there are a bunch of fucking nonsense around these days, and there always have been. I mean, the something Epstein files, yes, but that's in the upper echelons of these things. And indeed, in schools, there are more fucking nonsense than ever because we've given them this tarpaulin of the LGBTQ thing to hide underneath, while they groom children into whatever sexual deviance that they feel like grooming them into. And so yes, it has become a far bigger problem now than it was back in the 90s and the 2000s. But
Yeah.
at the same time, there is the other end of the coin where some people can be falsely accused of being a nonce. That's never gone away. That's still there. There are perfectly
Like the single father that was on vacation with his daughter, who was accused by the owner of a hotel where he registered for them to stay. That you could tell when I saw the news story. You look at the image of the father and the daughter in the news story. It is blatantly obvious that that child is his child. She looks like him, but the hotel owner assumed that because he was male, the child must not be his and he must be a pedophile. Even though if that child had been traveling with a woman, and she could have been traveling with a woman that looked nothing like her, the same individual would assume that the child was safe without any evidence, without any other evidence besides the fact of the sex of the adult that was traveling with the child. And of course, the child was put into a terrifying situation. If I remember right, they were either in a foreign country or very far away from home. So this child is confiscated from her father by strangers who then subjected her to an interrogation under the assumption that she was protecting this pedophile because she had been brainwashed, groomed into protecting this individual. And they also subjected the father to an interrogation, and being able to show, like, you don't usually take your child's birth certificate with you when you're traveling, because if it's stolen, that's a stolen ID. You don't usually take your kid's social security card or anything like that because your child is with you, and you're not usually asked to prove that your child is your child. But if I remember right, like I said, I think they were in a foreign country, and passports were what established that yes, actually, this was his child, and that is how they ended up remedying the situation. But not until after both the father and the child were terrorized, traumatized. They'll never forget what happened to them. And she's never going to forget the fact that her father was accused of being a pedophile just for being a man, despite the family resemblance. And this is the difference between how men and women are treated in society. So when we talk about hate, I want you to all remember the society that we live in is gynocentric. That is, there is a dominant focus in our society on the interests and welfare of women and girls over that of the interests and welfare of men and boys. And there is a tendency to fail at holding women and girls accountable for their behavior, or even presume them capable of being on the wrong side of the situation, being incorrect about something or being malicious. Doesn't matter whether it's from the mistake end of the spectrum or the malicious, the malice end of the spectrum. At all ends of the spectrum, women and girls get a larger quantity and quality, better quality of benefit of the doubt than men and boys. So at both sides, catering to their interests and not catering to other people's interests when they come into conflict with their interests. Women are given the better end of the stick, right? Whether you would say the long end of the stick or whatever. Meanwhile,
they've taken
oh, yeah, or they take it. Well, and they take it.
they've taken over men's sheds in the UK now.
They've taken over men's sheds in the UK. See, this is another one, right? We keep hearing about the epidemic of male suicide, which is it's a valid complaint. There are significantly more men committing suicide than there are women committing suicide. and there are significantly more people committing suicide than we should even have to worry might be attempting. Nobody should be in that situation. Like, I recognize there are some times when it happens because of a chemical imbalance, a natural chemical imbalance, but there is so much suicide as a result of pain and suffering, most of which is happening to men, that it is fair to call it an epidemic. It is absolutely fair to call it an epidemic. And we hear about it all the time from feminists that, oh, this is because men don't make friends, they don't communicate, they don't talk about their feelings, they don't go to therapy. And then as soon as men create something like men sheds that provide a therapeutic environment where men can work on their problems together in a manner that they are comfortable with, that is a safe space for them, basically, women have to invade it and take it over and feminize it. So when women complain that men aren't dealing with their problems, that they aren't talking about their feelings, that they aren't going to therapy, that they aren't communicating, they need to remember that when men do that with each other without female interference, women flock to interfere. Women demand entry, and then women demand that things be altered to suit their sensibilities. Then they
That's
want
why I
their
always
white
say
women
women are like.
back to committing suicide.
That's why I always say women are like the mafia.
Yeah, the mafia at least is
Yeah.
somewhat purpose driven.
But women are not. They're not. Well, women are sort of purpose driven. They want to take over the space.
Yeah, but not community purpose. Like the mafia actually used to have some degree of community responsibility. It doesn't excuse the murder, it doesn't excuse the theft, it doesn't excuse the shakedowns, but the fact is that they kept other gangs out. They didn't tolerate competition. And they also, if you look into the history of how they operated when their community needed something, and it wasn't being taken care of by the city, by the government, guess who stepped in? Just as much in some ways as the church did. Like I said, it doesn't make up for all the crime, it doesn't make up for the violence, but that is part of what the mafia used to do. And I don't know if they still do that or not. But I do know this.
They
Whether
don't.
they
They don't.
still do or not, women never did. They would take over like the mafia. They would gatekeep communities like the mafia, but for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the community.
Measures have been put in place to try and combat the mafia. I guess the government has been put in charge of that. It doesn't do a very good job because they're all
No.
in each other's pockets. They can grease each other's palms all the time. But men have transgressed over history, and bigger organizations and collectives have been put in place, and bigger ones on top of that to try and curtail the kind of things that men do in the mafia. Not that there aren't any women involved in the mafia, there absolutely also are. But then there's the things that women do individually, relationally, aggressively, on their own small scale. And I'm talking about female pedophiles. Nothing has been put in place to stop that. For all of history, women have been in charge of children. They don't do it. They don't do it in mafias. They do it on the smallest possible scale. Sometimes they talk about amongst themselves, but women don't tend to talk honestly amongst themselves. They tend to just say, "Oh yeah, you're great. You're a 10. You're all 10s. We're all great, aren't we?" Meanwhile, in the back rooms, women have been committing horrific acts of pedophilia for pretty much all of history, and no no measurements have been put in place to protect this from happening. The government doesn't do it. The government only works on bigger and bigger scales to try and prevent smaller collectives like the mafia from doing things, or ostensibly. I mean, they just go from one collective to a bigger collective to another bigger collective, and they never look at what women are doing individually. And despite women being so collective in their political trappings, the crimes they commit against especially children have always been right down to the individualistic level. Female pedophiles don't need an Epstein Island. They've never needed an Epstein Island. They have their families to themselves, and no one's going to curtail what they do. Now, some of you may be thinking, "Oh, how dare you assume that women are pedophiles just because of..." Well, that's what you do with men, folks. Not just feminists, but even the fake fucking tradcons. You just assume that if men are in charge of children, that means they're going to be raping children. Well, guess who is in charge of children? 95% of the time, at a lower bound. Women are the ones in charge of children. And if they want to nonce those children, they can, and they will, and they do. Because there's never been a mechanism put in place to stop them from doing that. Largely because society has decided on the whole that noncery cannot be committed by anyone who doesn't have a penis. But there's all kinds of noncery. It doesn't even have to involve a penetrative weapon. It can involve groping, or not even a physical thing. It can mean a psychological mechanism. Grooming never even has to involve raping at the end of the day. Very often it does, whatever you can call what women do that can be called raping. But women abuse children in ways not just physical. They abuse their sons into committing crimes on their behalf. All kinds of crimes. They especially single mothers who don't have a husband to do their crimes for them. All they have to do is extract a man's seed, and then 50% of the time they'll have a son to do their crimes on their behalf. And they don't even have to rape them into doing it. They can just abuse them into doing it. And then their sons go on to do the raping. Isn't that convenient? And they don't even stop them when they do that. That's like men can do raping, but women can raise men who do raping, and they do nothing to stop it. Women can raise men who do all of the crimes.
Yeah, we talked about female guards in the prison system. I want to mention something because I wrote about this a while back when I looked into the statistics that the Bureau, the Justice Bureau's investigation wing basically looked into, self-investigation wing. You'd think, we have investigated ourselves and we found no wrongdoing would be the thing that you always get from government, right? But what they actually found at juvenile detention facilities was that in the facilities for male juveniles, the majority of sexual misconduct was committed by staff, not other juveniles. The majority of the imposition where, the individual was in some way or another averse or had to be groomed into it, because remember, these are children, and was not uh, engaging in misconduct towards someone else and then trying to blame the other person. The majority of the conduct that was where somebody was a victim, that was done by the adult staff in the facility, not by the other children. And that's pretty much predictable. Kids don't necessarily have that on their mind. They shouldn't have that on their mind unless an adult has introduced it to them, and then that is an adverse circumstance for them. They have been victimized if that has happened to them. But the worst part of it was less than half of the staff, the adult staff, was female. But female perpetrators were responsible for 95% approximately, up to 98% if you count situations where the perpetrators were both sexes, of staff sexual misconduct in the juvenile facilities for boys. In the juvenile facilities for girls, it was mostly other inmates, not staff. So both directions, the majority of victims of sexual misconduct, imposition, exploitation, etc., the majority of victims reported female perpetrators. And that should tell you a lot, right? Those kids that come out and engage in recidivism behaviors, they went in as gang members, and they come out as hardened gang members who are more likely to commit violent crimes, more likely to steal, more likely to sell drugs, and so on. The distinct possibility is that instead of getting the mentoring and therapies that they needed to correct the path that they were on, they got raped by some dumb bitch. And the trauma made it more difficult for them to reform. Women turned reform school into rape clubs. And the first thing that feminists did when that information came out was call it consensual. Literally, the first feminist we talked to made the argument that these boys wanted this to happen, that they were willing participants. These underage kids that were raped by adults as old as middle age and older, that they wanted it because boys want sex. That was her logic. Some Canadian professor, she was an idiot, and then she threatened us for publishing what she said and mocking her for it. So we mocked her for threatening us as well. I think that video is still on my channel, my ancient channel that I haven't done anything with in years because I'm busy doing this. But yeah, we hear about women hating men, but our society condones things that men get condemned for when women do them. Our society turns a blind eye, or it excuses, or it rationalizes. Well, it's not as harmful when women do it. Oh, it's not as intentional when women do it. Oh, she's the victim because he was the aggressor, right? But you would never say that if the sexes were reversed and a teenage girl was the aggressor. You would say, yes, but that man is the adult and he should know better. He should know that this girl needs help, not exploitation, right? So should a woman know about a boy, that he needs help, not exploitation, that something is wrong if a child is a sexual aggressor, if a teenager is a sexual aggressor toward an adult, that something is missing from the equation that teenager needs for their protection. They haven't been mentored properly, or they've been allowed to get into things that they shouldn't get into, or somebody has done something to them that they shouldn't be doing. All right? And it doesn't matter whether that's a boy or a girl. That is universal. If somebody is underage and they're seeking out sexual attention from an adult, it is the adult's responsibility to protect that child from that child's misconceptions about relationships and sex, and that child's interest in an activity that is dangerous for them, regardless of the sex of the adult and regardless of the sex of the child and regardless of how long the adult has been an adult. But we don't think about it that way in society, do we? We look at a man that takes his child to the park to play with other kids. Well, the guy sits and relaxes on the bench just like a mom might do and say, something's wrong. That guy must be a pedo. But when my gym teacher raped one of the boys at my school, she was just moved on to another school. They didn't consider it that big of a deal because, oh, the relationship was consensual. Bullshit, it was consensual. That's an underage kid. It is statutory rape. When my track coach did that with a student who was over the legal age of consent, but still a student, a female student, he went to jail for 2 years. But when my gym teacher did it to a boy who was under the age of consent, she moved on to another school. Same community, same administration, same school building, different results because of gender. Right? So in the article, she says some men hate women and go online to talk about it.
It just occurred to me it's been an hour and we haven't even scrolled down the article.
Yeah. When you hear some men hate women and go online to talk about it, I want you to remember that women will go online and make excuses for women hurting boys. But some men complain because women are mean or dishonest or have toxic standards. On Reddit, there are whole groups. Well, there aren't anymore. I think they got rid of those subreddits. They didn't get rid of men's rights. On Reddit, there are whole groups, subreddits, which appear to be dedicated to blaming women for everything. One
translation: blaming women for some things some of the time. How dare they?
Or just not giving women a pass. Sometimes they'll say you're blaming women when you're simply saying this woman who did a bad thing, it's not somebody else's fault. Being a woman doesn't make it somebody else's fault. Right? One group called Our Men's Rights has 363,800 members. So I'll tell you right now, full disclosure, I've been a member of that subreddit. I haven't been on it for a long time, but because I haven't been on Reddit. Reddit's the HOA of the internet. But I haven't been on Reddit in years because of that very much. But I was part of that website, part of that subreddit before the front page became a thing. I was part of that subreddit when Reddit was its own separate subreddit, and then you had the other subreddits. When there were less than 3,000 members in that subreddit. So there's now what? I'm not even going to divide, but I don't know, 120 times as many members in that subreddit now. And I'm grateful, or actually 120. Yeah, that's right, 120. But I'm grateful to see that it expanded that much, and it got that big before before I quit posting very much there. It's never been a group dedicated to blaming women. It's been a group talking about problems that men face because of accommodations that only benefit women, or because our society has deemed it acceptable to infringe upon civil rights of men for women's benefit. It's not blaming, like, the lady that lives next door to me is not being blamed for this. If you're a woman in the audience and you didn't lobby for changes in law and policy to make this stuff happen, you're not being blamed for this. If you take this personally, it's a way of avoiding the fact that the situation being described is discriminatory and wrong and needs to be changed. But it's a lot easier for feminists to say, oh, you're blaming women, than it is to argue why they think that we should maintain a system that is discriminatory and wrong. So you're blaming women. That's what they'll say, right? Who post about why women have it easy, why women can't be trusted, why women ruin men's lives. Right? They won't tell you about the actual posts. They won't show you any posts from this subreddit or any other subreddit. What they'll do is they'll tell you what somebody that was selected by the documentarian or other individual said to them, right? Some joke somebody told.
Based, by the way, where's the lie? Given that women doesn't mean all women, it means some women. Yes, some women can't be trusted. Some women ruin men's lives. Some women have it easy. Where's the lie? Eh?
Good point. There's also the fact that feminists do this when it comes to men. Men are pigs. Men do bad things to women, right? Men kill women. Women are afraid men will kill them. Men are afraid women will laugh at them. And all of those stages. We choose the bear because being around a man is more dangerous no matter who he is. And we have no way of telling the difference between the hero and the villain in the story, because the guy's behavior doesn't give you a clue. Right? A guy's character, you can't vet him for character because you're too stupid. But women aren't dumb.
They choose the villain anyway.
Mm-hmm. They accuse the villain and the hero, and they choose the villain. You're right. They expect the hero to rescue them when the villain gets too hot for them to handle. And what ends up happening when they go someplace with the villain where the hero doesn't know where they are, doesn't know what's going on there, and can't do anything about it until they complain later on, and the villain does something to them that they're not happy about, they blame the hero for not protecting them. That's how women behave, because they have been allowed to become children over the centuries. This lady's mad at Reddit's Our Men's Rights subreddit. She should have seen the discussions back in the day in the Red Pill subreddit. They were a lot more harsh. I used to read. I didn't comment in there, but I used to read, and there was a post that really made a difference in how I look at men's issues. In that I was better able to understand a lot of how women argue men's issues against men's rights activists. There was an account called Whisper who pointed out that as women are getting older, from childhood, at about the age of 14, they stop maturing, or rather, they never hit a level of maturity that is beyond what a boy is expected to hit at the age of 14. Right? Prior to when you are starting to date, prior to when you are expected to be the breadwinner for whatever relationship you're going to be in with the opposite sex as a guy, prior to when you have any real legal responsibility for much of your actions. Although in the juvenile detention system in the U.S., there are boys there that are elementary school age. Just a reminder, we're talking 9-10-year-old kids that are in there getting raped by female prison guards, and then being told, well, it was consensual by feminists. But yeah, he was pretty well correct. The level of responsibility women are expected to take in their lives, the level of obligation women face in their lives, the level of restriction on self-indulgence and boundary crossing, things like that, putting yourself before the people around you. That women never develop past where a man would be at the age of 14, where a guy would be at the age of 14. They're never expected to be more accountable for themselves than a guy would be at the age of
Or
14.
or when they start getting male attention, that's when they stop growing. It's when they
Yep.
stop getting male attention, then they grow a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of women skip in maturity, and then when they get to middle age, they start developing it because they don't have a choice. But there's a lot of women out there that are my age that argue that men are responsible for abortion because they haven't passed enough laws to stop women from having abortions. And then they'll get mad if I point out that when abortion was illegal in the United States, the last year before abortion was legalized in the United States, there was an organization that today brags that they did 60,000 abortions just in Chicago. When it was illegal, when men passed laws, allegedly men passed laws, I think abortion laws were not gender specific in who supported them. But when there were laws to stop women from having abortions, women still had abortions if they wanted to. So what else are men supposed to do? So I pointed out the only way for men to control this, based on the history of women flouting the law when the law said a woman can't have an abortion, is for men to chaperone women everywhere they go, during everything they do, and prevent women from engaging in sex unless they want to have a baby, and prevent women
That's
from
what they
going
used to
into a clinic.
That's what they used to do in the UK. They used
Yep.
to chaperone women all around, but the women got what do you call it? Mad at that, and they protested a lot because
Yeah,
of
they
it.
called it
But
misogyny.
now women, yeah. So and because of the abortion thing in Chicago, the thing is that black women wanted the abortion laws to be changed as well. So they brought the abortion clinics into the black communities in the States because of what Margaret Singer did. All she had to do is go into the black community, and because the black women wanted Margaret Singer there, she was advocating for the black women to have abortion clinics in the black community.
Yeah, you kind of wonder if those abortion clinics had never existed. It is a fact that per capita, black women have 5 times as many abortions as white women. And the black population has been a minority population in terms of vote power in the U.S. throughout its history here, being able to vote. The whole population's history here being able to vote, which isn't a very long history, but it
And
is still a history.
Margaret Singer stopped. She also stopped black men from getting the vote earlier on as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she also I would call her largely responsible for the fact that the black population does not have more power as a voting bloc than they do, because the number of black babies that were never born before they were killed um, is high enough that it would have made a difference in the population dynamics in the country, in terms of if you actually acted as a voting bloc, based on your racial background, black people would not have been as powerless or as low power as they were.
And that's
And
why
this isn't just
and
limited to
that's why
black people.
Kanye
The
West
same is true as of Hispanic people as well.
that's why Kanye West said about the Holocaust, about the abortion clinics and stuff.
Yep.
And maybe if none of this happened, they wouldn't have to replace the Afro-American population with Somalians.
Yeah, that is true.
Black people are great. There are so many things black people are good at. None of these I could attribute to Somalians. Somalians are, and I will cut off that sentence before I complete it, or I will be arrested. But you know what I mean?
You think he's joking about that? He's not.
He's not. Yeah, that's the thing. So when you hear this paragraph and you hear what this woman is mad about, I want you to remember that women have made abortion the leading cause of death in the world. Being aborted, more people die, more human beings' lives are terminated through being aborted than what modern medicine calls the leading cause of death, which is cardiopulmonary emergencies, heart attacks, strokes, even when you throw in things like asthma and stuff like that, where people are dying from suffocation, none of it adds up to as much. If you put all the wars together in documented history during the time that abortion has been legal, abortion outnumbers them significantly in terms of how much blood has been shed, how much death has been dealt. But she says, let's see. A few months ago, I messaged a member who calls himself misocockney. It's like misogyny, but with cock in the middle.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't see that. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm an idiot. Thank you.
And he wrote back, honestly, I'm described as a pig of a man. I'm fit and well endowed. I'm a misogynist, as you know. I think he was making fun of her because that's just silly. So she asked, why are you a pig of a man? And he says, I don't believe I'm capable of love. I've been reaching down to treating women like objects my whole life. I've been educated toward mistreating women. Right here, I will say this. I think this exchange is fake. I don't believe it ever happened. Because I've been in that subreddit, and that is not the way the men in there talk. That's just not
It smells like
normal.
baits.
Yeah.
But I would have thought most men would say, actually, no, I'm not a pig. I mean, especially men of certain religious persuasions would say, no, I'm not a pig. I am religiously abhorrented to such comparisons. But most people, even people of religions who don't abhor pigs, would be like, yeah, no, I'm actually not a pig. I actually don't appreciate being compared with a pig. I consider pigs to be lesser than humans, and I consider it literally dehumanizing to call me a pig. And if only the men of most populations could get around to saying, actually, yeah, no, it's not okay that you call me a pig. It's not okay that you say all men are pigs. I think you might be dehumanizing us there. Can we say that? Can we get away with saying that you are dehumanizing us by calling us literally not humans? No, yeah, no, maybe. I don't know. I don't fucking know.
That would be nice. That would be nice. But we live in a gynocentric world, and so the chances are that it's not going to happen. That's the sad thing. But the other sad thing is if you object to being called a pig or treated like shit, what happens? You get called a misogynist. So she asks.
You might get
Go ahead.
Or you might get services cut off because you're a misogynist.
Or you might even get arrested if you object too vehemently, especially if you're in the UK.
I'm saying nothing, and neither is Richard.
That's right. It's insane.
Because
It's
that
an
almost
insane
that
situation.
because that almost happened to me. I almost had a service that I realized would cut off because of that show.
Dear
So,
me. That's
I said
the
some truths.
The UK has been defeated. It has been defeated by women. So he says he doesn't believe he's capable of love, and she says, "Do you want to change?" Right? This is another one. If a woman said that, the first question would be, "What happened to you? Why not? What caused you to be this way? Did somebody hurt you? Is there something I can do for you? Have you considered therapy? Anything but do you want to change?" Right? If he doesn't think he's capable of loving women, this woman thinks that he owes women change from this circumstance, that he owes women, he has an obligation to women, that he should recover from this inability to love women that he thinks he has.
But I'm just a pig. How can you expect a pig to love human women? What?
That sounds like fanfic.
Yep. Then the rest of the conversation, this is more like when I looked at this the first time, I'm like, okay, this is fictional. I'd like you to use honorific while talking to me. Honorific. And of course, she says, as in sir. Why? Sir with a capital, because I'm superior and I want you to acknowledge that. I have no desire to see a woman as an equal. I think we need to start opposing the feminist movement. This is a stereotypical feminist portrayal of men who are simply advocating that fathers should retain custody rights to their children after divorce so that they can mentor them and protect them and ensure that the mother is mentoring and protecting them and not just taking money from dad and spending it on shoes.
Or your mum will take money from you thinking that she owes or your mum will take money from your account thinking that it's her money. My mum did that one time. Well, not one time, but a lot of times.
You're not the only one. I happen to know multiple people who have talked to me about that happening, especially after a divorce. The mother, the biological mother, takes money out of the kids' trust funds, out of their savings accounts, if they have checking accounts, anything that she has access to.
I'm surprised you don't hear stories about that where you work with the special needs kids.
Well, I work with special needs adults. And a lot of times the guardian doesn't have access to those funds because they are put in the control of the organization that is providing their care. So what my job is, like, say an individual, the parents are no longer willing or able to provide care for them in adult adulthood. And they put them in their own apartment or as a housemate in a house with 3 or 4 other people of similar disabilities. And then there will be 2 or more people during the day in that home and 1 or more people during the night in that home that are like me, that are just there to make sure everybody's safe, and anything they can't do for themselves, we do. Anything they need help with, we help them with. Anything they need protection from, we protect them from it. Like if some telemarketer calls and they don't understand the phone call, it's our job to step in and make sure that they're protected from being scammed. Or if somebody comes to the door that doesn't belong there, it's our job to make sure that that person is removed from the property by the police. We call if there's a snowstorm and the power goes out. It's our job to make sure that we get the correct help for those individuals. But once a family has relinquished essentially caregiving responsibility and whatever degree of guardianship that you give over to a caregiver to my company, they're also relinquishing most of their control. Like they don't get into that person's accounts anymore and take money out. They can have a right of approval before any large sum of money is spent. But it's not like they don't have that kind of access to be able to just take what they want and use it. So
And
it's a different situation.
Can I clarify? No, I have no desire to see women as an equal, because physically they are not, nor are they in any sexual species. If men and women were equals, there would not be a sexual species in the first place. It's only an asexual species like fucking bacteria where they are equal, because there's no such thing as men and women. The very existence of males and females within the same sexual as opposed to asexual species, that necessarily means they're not equal. If I was a spider, I would be like, as a male spider, no, I do not see myself as equal to a female spider, because the female spider is like 100 times the size of me, and she's very much in charge of the reproductive process, and I'm just here to do the inseminating. And ladies and gentlemen, you see how that relates. You see how that relates
to how her off, she might kill him.
And I've ever since I was a child, I was like, how is it that arthropods like spiders and bees and ants have like a giant female who is in charge of everything, and the males are just drones? And somehow this evolved, not on land but in sea, because we're all evolved from a common ancestor in the sea that was arthropodic, and the thing with this the thing with the spine. Fish and arthropods used to be the same species, and once upon a time we evolved from that thing, and somehow this evolved into insects where the women are considerably larger than the males, and it evolved into mammals where the male is considerably larger than the female. In either case, they're not equal. But how is it that we devolved into these two different mindsets, if you can even attribute a mind to the likes of spiders and ants and bees? But how is it that mammals have a species where the males are bigger and stronger, and they have more reproductive say over things than women do? But once you get into this, you realize they don't. It's actually kind of the same. The fact that mammalian species have larger males doesn't affect the power over reproductive situations. Like even in mammals, the females, despite being smaller, still have the final say over who gets reproductive rights. Even though human females are smaller than human males are much like the queen bee. They have the final say when it comes to reproductive rights. I don't know if I'm getting this across yet, but it's not to do with physical size. It's to do with the hormonal effect that males and females have over each other, and that's not equal. That's never going to be equal. So no, I do not see women as equals. Women, no matter how small they are. I mean, even in gorillas, where the female is half the size of the male. Even in any given mammalian species where the woman is fucking a fifth of the size of males, women still have dominion over who gets to inseminate them. It's just like it is with spiders, just like it is with anything, all the way back, fucking millions of years back in evolutionary history. It's women's who get to say who inseminates them. And this has always been the same, no matter how big males get. So yeah, we're not equal. And it's nothing to do with how big we are. It's to do with how evolution has set us up. It's to do with whatever incentives females are able to give males. And yeah, that could be, only the biggest male gets to inseminate me. That's, is much like it is with spiders, even when female spiders are bigger than male spiders, and it's the same with humans, even though male humans are bigger than female humans. Size and strength isn't the point. It's about whatever vector can be used. It could be pheromonal, it could be physical, it could be, dare I say, toxic. Males and females are not equal, not in any species. It can develop in all kinds of physical or chemical directions. And it's helpful that we happen to exist in a species with huge brains that can deprogram themselves into realizing that it kind of doesn't matter who's bigger or who's smaller or who has the hormones floating across the place. We happen to be in a species that has big brains that can, like I say, reverse engineer all this shit and go, okay, now we see what's going on. Maybe we can prevent ourselves from falling into an evolutionary niche where all we can do is plunge ourselves into the programming of this evolutionary niche. And we don't necessarily have to make males bigger and bigger and women more and more manipulative. Maybe we can be like, I see the trick now. And yeah, we can develop this species without falling into the traps that will make us unable to adapt to environmental change. And it's especially important when humans are so intelligent that the environmental change is at our own hand. You see how this is all going to grow out of control unless we can get a handle on what humans are doing to our own environment, and how we're going to destroy the environment unless we can get a hold of what it is that's driving us. And what it is that's driving us is the same thing that's driving spiders and flies and bees and ants. That we just plug as much as we can into women at the expense of men. And yeah, that's going to drive us apart and make us extinct. And unless we can figure out how not to do that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are trying to do here at Honey Badger Radio. Figure out why we're doing that and why we should not do that. Yes, men are stronger than women physically, but women are stronger than men psychologically and perhaps hormonally. And if we forget one of these paths while hyper-focusing on the other path, then we're going to fall into the same evolutionary black hole that 90% of species who ever existed on this earth will fall into. But when we fall, it's going to be harder than any other fall. We're going to take the earth with us if we don't figure this out. In short, when humans do finally bring the earth to the brink of extinction, it won't be because of men. It will be because of, well, not even women. It will be because we weren't able to harness the comprehension of the difference between men and women, and that there even is a difference between men and women. I mean, needless to say, if we're just going to go ahead and pretend that there isn't a difference between men and women, then of course we're going to destroy the earth. Chasing this lunatic notion that there is no difference between males and females. Like, our intelligence is our advantage, but at the same time, it could be our downfall. No other species on Earth has failed to understand that there is a difference between men and women. We're the only species ever that has tried to forget that men and women are not equal. And that's where we are right now. We're surrounded by lunatics who are determined to float this fantasy that men and women are equal, when by definition we're not. God.
You know, the sad thing is, no matter how much we talk about this, no matter how much we point out differences between the sexes, the only time feminists ever want to talk about it is when it benefits women to recognize those differences. If it doesn't benefit women to recognize those differences, doesn't even matter whether it harms women or not. Even if it just doesn't benefit them, feminists won't want to talk about it. Right? The same feminists will say, for instance, that it is not as big of a deal, it's not that bad, it's not as much of a problem if a woman engages in violence against a man as it is if a man engages in violence against a woman, because men are bigger and stronger. Right? They'll say that. They'll say that women are less capable of using violence to cause harm, and that they're less capable of using violence to undermine a person's self-interest, keep them from enforcing their boundaries, take things from them that they don't want to give up, so on. Right? They'll make that claim that a man can overpower a woman, but a woman cannot overpower a man. That when a man engages in violence, it's a beatdown, but when a woman does it, it's just a slap, quote unquote, just a slap. Even though women use guns, baseball bats, poisons, other people to engage in violence, they use proxy violence, and women can be physically strong enough to do significant harm. And men have areas that are particularly vulnerable. It only takes a couple of pounds of pressure to remove your testicles in a particularly violent manner, for instance. So And it isn't as
How do you know
though
that?
did I remind you of do I need to remind you of some of the experiences I've had in my life? I
Oh,
learned
okay.
a
All
few
right.
things. I learned a few things.
Well,
We'll just say that.
you're just a
The
man,
thing is,
Hannah. Prove to me
yeah,
that you're not a man. 0 days.
0 days. But the fact is, and it's not funny that it only takes a couple of pounds of pressure to break the skin on the scrotum and yank off a pair of testicles. A man is that vulnerable, right? If a woman decides she wants to be violent, there was a woman here in the Dayton metro area several years ago that made the news because she bit her sex partner's testicles off because she was angry with him. I think that's pretty fucking violent. Right? That is violent. She wasn't accusing him of rape. He wasn't doing anything bad to her. She was mad at him because he was going to leave. And she wanted him to stay. And she bit his testicles off. That was it. There was no even a bad excuse. She just bit his testicles off to control his ability to leave, to walk out of the apartment. That's it. Violence. But women will claim that women should get a pass on violence because men are bigger and stronger and more capable than women. More capable, right? But the minute that you talk about a job where the job duties, the involved tasks are difficult, dangerous, require a significant amount of physical strength, and you say, well, men do these jobs more than women do. Oh, that's discrimination. It's because women are discouraged from seeking these jobs. No, it's because there's a higher percentage of workers who have the physical strength to do these jobs that happen to be male than there are that happen to be female. Right? Women will argue that it's worse when a man engages in sexual violence against a woman than the reverse because women's sensibilities are more fragile, because men want it more and so on. But when you talk about jobs that are involve wear and tear on the sensibilities, um, jobs that are, involving horrific smells and dirt and grime and nastiness, things that women don't really want to deal with. And you point out, the reason that it takes hazard pay to get these jobs is because it's such a disgusting job to have to do. And no, there are more women that don't want to do this job than there are that want to do it. And there are more men willing to do the job than there are women who are willing to do the job. That's why these men are making more money than you, the cashier at the convenience store or the retail outlet that sells girly clothes and jewelry. That's why he makes more money than you do. Even though, yeah, you clean the toilet in the bathroom, but he's breaking up fatbergs in the sewer. Right? Or he's cleaning up blood and guts at a crime scene. Again, women will claim that men are more capable of handling that than women are when it comes to women benefiting as crime victims from more compassion in society than men receive. But as soon as there's a job to be done, men suddenly are not more capable because that would mean that they deserve to make more money. Well, they deserve to make more money. We're not equal. But in terms of this user, I kind of looked the user up, and this user is so bad that Reddit suspended me for looking at his account. I'm not kidding. It says that's suspicious activity. I've been on and off. I've never had that message before. There's nothing in my DMs or my account that indicates that anything has occurred that should have resulted in that. So I'm pretty sure that Reddit suspended me for looking at this guy's account, which hasn't had a post in 2 years. And while occasionally he'll say something in the men's rights subreddit, his main haunt is a bunch of gag subreddits, not men's rights. If you look at the men's rights subreddit, you probably won't see a single one of his posts because that's not one of the prominent users there. That's the guy that they got to talk to them because they couldn't get the prominent users to talk to them, which is kind of what I expected. This guy is mocking this person for contacting him, and he is a class A, top of the line troll, and this is trolling. I'd like you to use the honorific while talking to me, as in sir. Why? Sir with a capital, because I'm superior and I want you to acknowledge that. I have no desire to see a woman as an equal. I think we need to start opposing the feminist movement. And that should be your first clue. We've been opposing the feminist movement, most of us, since before we were men's rights activists. I was an anti-feminist in 1985. The first time I got hit with the label men's rights activist, I believe, was 2009, maybe 2007, maybe as early as 2007. Definitely not any later than 2009. I've already started. Even women are against how far it's gone. I believe women are below men in many ways. May I show you, then we can proceed, the symbol of my superiority? So she sends back to him, please don't send me an explicit picture. You know, before she said that, it's quite possible that she was going to get a picture of him doing the gun show pose. Got tickets to the gun show, showing off his muscles and whatever. But now he has to send her a dick pic because she just told him not to. You mean, please show me? And there it is, his penis poking through the flies of tight gray jeans. Now we can proceed. So that's her claim about what the men's rights movement is. Right?
I'll take shit that didn't happen for 15,000, Alex.
I don't even care if it did. Even if it did, she found a troll that mostly posts in other subreddits and occasionally drops into the men's rights subreddit and try to make him representative of the men that are in there every day talking about custody issues and how to deal with false allegations and what due process rights, what respecting due process rights looks like, and equal treatment under the law, things like that. Because if she had had a conversation with, say, the guy who exposed the fact that the reason that states are so unfair to men in the court systems when with regard to income and child support is because the federal government pays them dollar for dollar for everything that they can claim they had to take legal action to recover. Like, they couldn't talk to that guy because he has things to say that are logical and reasonable and demonstrate an actual need for a men's rights movement. So instead, they talk to the troll. Because if you talk to the troll, you can make the whole community look bad without lying about the community at all. You just say that this guy's, besides saying that this guy's representative, which he's not. The manosphere, she says, is a loose group of men who promote misogyny and anti-feminism online.
I'll stop you there. There are women in the manosphere.
Yep.
I mean, Hannah's right here.
I had no idea.
I know. According to like 1 million people on Twitter, she's not a woman, but I can confirm. Well, I mean,
Let me see how deep I can make my voice.
I've met Hannah in person, but I've never confirmed biologically that she's a woman. But She looks pretty much like a woman to me.
Well, the gynecologist who delivered my son has confirmed that I am in fact female. By the way, I'm old too. I'm not just any female. I'm old. My son this year will turn the age that I was when I gave birth to him, and I was not a young mother. Right? I was old enough to have already, if I had decided to get a master's degree, I would have had it by then. But I didn't. I didn't drown myself in academia, which is why I'm not brainwashed and I'm able to be here talking some sense. But yes, they promote misogyny and anti-feminism. Notice the poisoning the water again. Like they do this every time. Anti-feminism must be misogyny. The fact that feminists undermine women's success by treating female accountability as a form of misogyny. So they are a detriment to women using one of the most important tools in the toolbox for success, right? But opposing them is misogyny, is hate for women. You hate women if you don't want to stop other women from teaching them to be helpless and stupid. That's what she's saying here. Then she goes on, a lot of them are incels or involuntarily celibate men who are frustrated at their own lack of romantic options. Right? Her goal here is to treat this as a means of attacking every single problem a man can have. It's apparently illegitimate that men are frustrated at their own lack of romantic options. Right? But if women are in that situation, they're being mistreated.
They call them foam cells,
Yeah.
and they get more sympathy.
The dumb thing is most women have options. Like there's it's for a woman to not have options. Well, let's just say this. In the population of disabled adults, there are almost no women who are single that don't have somebody they call a boyfriend. And that agrees with her that he is actually their boyfriend or girlfriend. The ones that are single want to be single.
I blackpilled a whole Discord about that as well.
Yeah. In the population of adults with disabilities that are profound enough that they need caregivers, however, there are numerous males who want a partner and don't have one. This is because even a woman who doesn't have the usual things to contribute to a relationship that most women think they need in order to be attractive can find a man who wants to be with her. She has to actively not want involvement to not find that. She doesn't even have to look for involvement. She has to avoid involvement to not be involved. A woman can be morbidly obese and she will still have a boyfriend if she wants to. She just has to recognize that she isn't going to date a bodybuilder who values being healthy.
You can always find a chubby chaser.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
It sort of goes both ways. There are some women who have a bit of a fat fetish in men. They're not quite as common.
Well, I'll tell you this: dad bods are the sexiest type of bods. They are cuddly and still handsome.
Don't listen to a gentleman. It depends on.
They are the sexiest type of bods, especially if they're the father of your child.
Well, yeah, it kind of specifically if they're the father of a child, and I think to some degree, women like fat men if those women in question happen to have been the ones who fed those men. Like, women like it when they feed a bunch of delicious food to a man and that's how he gets fat. But a woman who's never met you won't be particularly interested in your fat because that means someone else has fed him. and yeah, it goes both ways in all kinds of ways. But let's not forget, women have higher standards than men do, and it's very much skewed hugely in that direction. Like I will go so far as to say most women these days want the 666. They want a six pack and a six-figure salary and and 6 inches and whatever the other six is. Like a man can find a woman who's into him even if he's a dad bod, but your chances aren't as good as a man finding a woman because he happens to like a bit of chunk on
Here's
on whatever he's
my
looking
take
for.
on it. Like you have men who are incels not because their standards are too high, but because literally no woman has an interest in them. You have women who call themselves incels because they cannot find among the men that meet their standards a man who takes an interest in them. But those same women will complain about men that they're not interested in hitting on them. On the social ladder, if you look at it as a thing, a real physical thing, right? You put that ladder up, and you say maybe the bottom rung on the social ladder is nerds, dweebs, geeks, people who are socially inept, people who are unattractive, whatever. And the next rung up is slightly socially adept, nerds, dweebs, geeks, people that are a little more capable of interacting with other people on a positive level, even if they're not the best looking. And as you improve social aptitude and physical appearance and all the contributing factors to building relationships with other people, being able to find things in common, so on, you get closer to, like, you get through the nerd community and you get into what we used to call preppies when I was in high school. Um, Essentially, uh, upwardly mobile people. You might call them yuppies in the 80s when they graduated high school and got jobs and stuff like that. But at the bottom rung, you're not at the bottom of the social ladder. Right? Beneath the bottom rung, there are 2 levels of basement. And the first level of basement might be like somewhere between 1 and 10% female, where none of the people on the social ladder would give those people any consideration. The rest are men. They get ignored. They're invisible. If they become visible, they're treated as though their presence is an offense to the people around them. And if you're in that level, you generally go through life keeping your head down, right? You don't try to make any kind of romantic connections with people unless you're really sure that they've given you all the signs. And in some instances, you just don't try because nobody ever does that. In many instances, right below that level is another level, and it is all men, all boys and men. There are no women. And those are the guys that If they sit next to a female on the bus, whether she's an adult or child, if they sit next to a female on the bus, somebody is going to treat it as an aggressive act. Those are the guys that, if they go into a restaurant and sit by themselves, they get kicked out. They're missing something always that connects them with the whole rest of humanity. And incel men are in those two bottom groups. Women who call themselves incels can be as high up as the bottom rung of the social ladder. And they will look around them and they will think that they merit a better looking guy than they are. And they will not consider the humanity of the men around them and the character of the men around them. They'll fantasize about the bad boy who looks like, I don't know, Han Solo, or the actor that plays Yoki, or the actor that plays Aragorn, right? But they won't consider the guy that they work with or talk to every day, that has the same values that they have, likes to do the same things that they like to do, and might even be more attractive than them, but isn't that attractive. And they're not incels because they can't find a partner. They're incels because their level of picky is above their level of attractiveness. And it's partly because a woman who doesn't have the characteristics that connect with other people, a woman who is highly unattractive, right? Maybe she has one tooth left in her head and it's broken. Maybe her breath is bad. Maybe she has bad body odor. Maybe she knows jack shit about hygiene. She can still find a guy who will sleep with her. She can still find a guy who will make a relationship with her. Right? But she won't accept that guy if she's in the mentality of the female incel. She thinks she deserves a 10. And her idea of a 10 isn't based on has the same values as me, has the same goals in life as me, or is willing to mutually support each other's goals, is a kind person, is a caring person, is fun to talk to, has a good sense of humor. None of those things. It's, gotta have that washboard stomach, right? Gotta have that sleepy-eyed bad boy look. Gotta be a little bit dangerous, right? That is not involuntary. That is an attitude. And it's a wrong attitude, right? The guys that usually you hear about calling themselves incels, they don't have that same opportunity. They don't have women out there that they're rejecting because I should be able to get someone that's significantly more attractive than me, and I only care about how she looks. I don't care about how she treats me. Right? That's not what's happening with them. Many of them are involuntarily celibate because there is nobody that will take an interest in them. There's a big difference. The term was invented by a woman who wanted to whine about being temporarily without a dating partner, right? The reality for a lot of men is that they go their whole lives without one. Their whole lives. Birth to death. Go ahead, Richard.
It was called infill. It was called infill, not incel.
Was it?
It's spelled INFEL, infill.
Oh, geez. INFEL?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But then I don't know when the term incel was coined though. So.
But it's interesting because, women did try to reclaim the term based on that. It didn't work, right? And so now they just use it to hate on people. And, this isn't just a small group of people either, right? You have to think about this. The other side of the coin of the calculation that 80% of the women in the world are competing for the top 5 to 10% of men and ignoring all of the other men.
That's an outdated stat.
What is it now?
It's
90%
now
of the women?
99% and 1%.
It doesn't surprise me. But even giving the generous, 80%, right? If those women are not considering the other 90% of men in the world, that means that 90% is competing for the remaining 20%. And, excluding the fact that in some countries, there are men who hoard wives, hoard girlfriends, whatever, hoard women, that indicates that approximately 70% of men are losing out. They don't have access to dating and relationships. Right? So even if you don't want to be that generous, let's say there's a 20% cushion in there, 70 down to 50%, where sometimes they get to date. Some of those women will sleep around with those guys, but they're still looking to partner with the upper echelons. That's still half the population of men in the world.
And this
that
is
are
why
incels.
this is why it's not as counterintuitive as it sounds to say that Islam is a feminist religion. I mean, after 100 years of being subjected to these feminist ideals that have brought women to such high standards and men to such low standards, it sort of makes sense that well, already at this point in the West, it's an understatement to say that 25% of men are competing for 75% of the women. So it's hardly surprising when you look at the Middle East in these Muslim countries where men are allowed 4 wives, that 25% of the men are married to 75% of the women. I mean, it's only when you call it marriage that there is even a delineation between these things. At this point in the West, with all this hookup culture and shit, you can uncontroversially say that 25% of the women are hooking up with 70%. No, 75% of the women are hooking up with 25% of the men, and that is a low estimate. Like Richard said, it's probably more like 10 and 90.
99% of the women.
It's probably it's at least approaching 1 to 99. And as long as we're not addressing that problem, it's only going to get worse. 10 years from now, it's going to be 0.1 to 99.9. And yeah,
it's heading that way.
Well, and the thing is, all right, so you have this situation where, again, even if we're generous, if we're extremely generous, a full 50% of the male population never has a date, and 70% never gets to settle down, right? Not fully. That's before we get into the divorce rate in some countries. What do we do with all those extra men? The answer is that the establishment uses them as fodder for war. Those are the men who get roped one way or another, by hook or by crook, by draft or by scam into fighting and dying in those wars. And it depends on the nation. It might be completely sanctioned by the local establishment. It might be the thing that the local establishment uses university incentives and job training incentives and prestige and incentives and so on to persuade these young men to get involved and do, right? Or draft them into it, or in some countries, it's where terrorist organizations take you into a beautiful garden and fill you full of hashish and make promises about 72 virgins while you're high as fuck and can't account for yourself, and get you to pledge your loyalty to their organization and start planning to be a suicide bomber or cut people's heads off or everything else that happens in Islamic warfare. It might be that your local gang in your neighborhood, where drugs are sold and people's houses are getting broken into, drive-by shootings are happening, and so on, they rope you in. Well, you can't get laid as just a regular guy on the street, because who wants to be with just a regular guy on the street? But if I make a boss out of you, if I make a pimp out of you, if you make a lot of money selling this shit, if you make yourself well known for being a dangerous man, you might have a better chance. Right? That's where they end up. They end up as the bottom rung of the work ladder, the dirt under the feet of the leadership of the establishment or the underworld, and they die in large numbers, in violent circumstances as a result. There is no equivalent for women, none. And that's not even considering the number that off themselves because they are depressed or desperate to get out of that situation. Right? And Shadow Wolf 87 says, desperate men make good foot soldiers. Well, they're more willing to be foot soldiers than men who have everything going for them. Right? But, yeah. So she's poisoning the water with regard to involuntarily celibate men. Oh, they're just frustrated with their own lack of romantic options. No, they're usually trampled under the feet of society in general. Some have traditional views of masculinity, believing women should stay at home or be stay-at-home mothers and have a duty to have babies. Others would rather shun women completely. So there's the only mention men going their own way gets. They're more scared of men they can't boss around than anything. If they can't have power over a man, because he's not interested, he's given up on women. That is scarier to them even than men who, like, incels are actually notoriously gynocentric to a degree. Like, and if you talk to them, they want relationships. They want to be close to women. They want to be recognized as potential partners. MGTOW have basically given women the finger, turned their backs, and walked away. And if you talk to them, you better be ready to be told no. I'm not going to talk to you. I don't want to be alone with you. I don't care what your opinion is, and I don't care if I offend you. You're not important to me, and you don't deserve my attention. If you can't handle that, then as a woman, you shouldn't talk to them. They don't want you to. They don't want you getting involved in their shit. So leave them alone. But feminists are terrified of men going their own way.
Far more terrified than they are about pickup artists, like he who shall not be named. Fine, Andrew Tate. This is why they're teaching like school pupils to be terrified of Andrew Tate, but they're not teaching them about any prominent MGTOWs. They can't think of any prominent MGTOWs. They're not interested in any prominent MGTOWs because MGTOWs scare them far more than PUAs ever will. Because at least PUAs are. I'm going to preempt what you're saying, Richard. PUAs are only interested in pushing men into gynocentrism. They're pushing men into this is how you please women, even if it's like how you please a different woman every day. That's still better than going off and doing your own thing, because there's nothing that scares women more than men going off and doing their own thing. They get wetter than an otter's pocket at the idea of a man teaching men how to please women, even if it's just temporarily pleasing women. They because they want the tournament species. They want 90% of women to crowd around 10% of men. The 10% of men who can give them all the resources, even if those men ostensibly hate women, even though they fucking don't, because those men want to give women all their attention and all their resources, even if they divide those resources between hundreds of women. They would rather have 1% of a rich man than 100% of a poor man. That's what's going on. And that's why they're so scared of MGTOW, because MGTOW will give them 0% of what they have. That they can't handle that. What the idea of a man who gives women nothing is infinitely, literally, I mean mathematically, infinitely worse than a man who would give them anything. Right?
Yep. They can't use him. They can't exploit him. They can't control him, and they can't take anything from him. And they can't. They don't even have an easy time punishing him, for that, because if he is if he's like most men going their own way, he has protected himself as best he could against false allegations. He's very careful to avoid circumstances and actions that make him vulnerable to them. So they don't even have that. So they just don't talk about men going their own way. When they do, they make shit up. But they really don't most of the time. They just ignore that whole segment of the manosphere. But she goes on, and we'll finish up with this paragraph right here, and then we'll continue this. Are you available again next week, Richard? Are you there, Richard?
Yeah, I just had to hold the mute button. Sorry. Yeah, I'm available next week.
Awesome. Then we will continue this next week. This is actually a really long article too. But
I can tell the story about my mom taking. I could tell the story about my mom taking my money.
Okay. We'll talk to some people that are close to you before you do that. But I'll explain more after the show. But definitely, if it's okay, once you've talked to people that are close to you, and you're still interested in sharing more information about that, then that sounds like a good plan. But last paragraph for the night. Online, they soak in their victimhood and rage at anyone who disagrees. It sounds like projection to me. But sometimes it spills out into real life in violent ways. In England and Wales, 2.3 million people each year, around 1 in 20 adults, commits violence against women and girls. So this was written in 2024. So she already knows about the aspect of that the guys from the UK can't talk about. She already knows about the rape gangs, right? She already knows about the culture clash. But she's not going to mention that. She's going to blame it on people on the internet. And I'm the only one, I think, that is able to say anything about that, because I think the two of you actually would go to jail if you say anything.
There are no rape gangs. How very dare you?
Yeah, yeah.
It's all white men
Nope.
doing it. Shut up.
It never happened.
Yeah. Shit that ever happened. Hashtag. The bad thing about it is that besides the actual crime itself, is that it's been mostly women like this one protecting those gangs who targeted underage kids. And now that we're hearing about it, we're hearing about what they did to girls. But the research that I've done on it so far, there were boys who were victims as well. And there were occasional stories that came out, like the guy that was let off in.
I've been telling people.
Oh, go ahead. I've been
telling people that, but I've been telling people that like for ages, but no one really believed me. So
yeah, there was a while back.
If you think Epstein Island only supplied people with girls,
no,
I have much to fill you in about, for want of a better phrase. But yeah, given that they had the likes of Peter Mandelson in there, yeah, no, they had boys young enough to represent girls. You know,
all the creepy paintings that they have up have both children of both sexes in them. I don't believe that their activities were any different.
But yeah, no one gives a shit about male victims. Maybe 20 years from now, we can finally get into saying, do you know all those Jews were raping boys as well? But we can't. It's not. That's a long time off. We'll concentrate on all girls they raped first.
See Afghanistan for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bachabazi and all that.
And I want to point out, the United States military knew about that. There were soldiers that came back and disclosed that they were told not to talk about it and not to do anything about it, because they were working with the Afghan soldiers that were committing the acts of terror on these kids.
Are you raping people? No, it's fine. We're only raping boys. Oh, okay. Well, carry on.
Yeah, because it's a sin if it's a girl, but it's okay if it's a boy. And if he complains, then he's gay, and they'll throw him off of a building or behead him. That's essentially the way that was. But in the UK, there was a guy. I believe it was one of the northernmost parts, that went after a boy in a swimming pool. And if I remember right, he assaulted the kid. I don't remember whether there was penetration, whether it was considered rape or another type of sexual assault. But in his hearing, he argued that it was a sexual emergency, and also that he didn't know he wasn't allowed to do that in this country, and they let him off.
Well, it's not a sexual emergency. It doesn't count as rape if you do it to a boy. Well, I guess it's a sticky area, for want of a better phrase, if a man does it to a man. But if a woman does it to a man or a boy, it's literally not rape.
Yeah, so because he doesn't have a penis.
I guess maybe if you identify as a woman, then that doesn't. Oh my God! I just opened up a can of worms that I don't even want to think about.
So there were incidences like that made the news. There's a lot more of them that didn't really get reported on, but you'd hear about them from people that this happened in their neighborhood or that happened in their community, and they knew about it and they could tell you about it, but the media is not reporting on it because it wasn't a girl. Yeah. The Night Scotsman, I've gotten kind of used to speaking about things that are downright stomach turning. Um, been doing this for a long time, and my first activism was on the subject of abortion, which in and of itself, there's not really anything about that subject that isn't stomach turning. Like to the degree that I've sat and described all of the different styles and types of abortion to somebody to get across the point that it's not just tissue, and it's not like clipping your fingernails. Um, and I started doing that. I started looking into that and engaging in activism at the age of 13. So it's not difficult for me. I'm able to do that because of that. And no, and I've also had a few experiences. It takes a while to be able to talk about that stuff without, you know, sounding horrified. But yeah, there's a reason to be sarcastic. The sarcasm is a tool, a cutting tool that is used to stab basically at the subject, not the victims, but the people who condone it. When women, in particular, condone violence that they would abhor if it was happening to them, but since it's not, they condone it. They deserve to be stabbed with sarcasm. And yeah, senior sticks, don't get me started on abortion. We'll be here all night. But yeah, depending on the development of the baby, the gestational age, um, abortion can be anything from um, a simple act of flushing or sucking out the barely formed baby to a brutal act involving salt poisoning and dismemberment. And it can be varying levels of dangerous to the mother as well. And you don't want to hear it. And I don't know if I can describe it all on YouTube without getting flagged. If I was a doctor and I was explaining it in clinical terms, I could. But yeah, no, I don't think that we would not get in trouble for that. I do
I
recommend that you avoid looking up any information that would be illustrated, because the images are gore. It is straight up gore. If you look at what that is, it is horrific, and you'll never be able to argue pro-abortion side of an argument again after that.
I am a doctor, and you'll notice I stopped talking about circumcision a long time ago because I just couldn't handle it anymore, because the people I was arguing with just ignored the biological procedure that went along with it, and they were just like, it's fine. I could never quite gauge where they were coming from. They were just like, no, it's fine that we genitally torture babies, because we've always been doing it. And it's much the same argument with abortion. It's fine because we've been doing it for so long. Why would we be doing something for so long if it wasn't a good idea?
By the
I,
way, I also
I,
advise against looking up botched circumcisions or immediate post circumcision appearance after, and even the difference between a botched and a not botched circumcision. Don't even look that up, because again, it is straight up gore.
Ironically, what I just described was conservatism. The idea that we've been doing it for so long and therefore it must be a good idea. So we have to conserve what we've always been doing. This is what I want to say to people who ostensibly call themselves progressivists. You're not advocating for something progressive. You're advocating for something conservative. It's been done for so long. I mean, especially circumcision. when it comes to the Jews and the Muslims. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and because we've been doing it for so long, it must be a good thing because we haven't all died out. Yeah, that's what the Aztecs would say about the fucking people that they were beheading on the top of the pyramid and then rolling their heads down the fucking side of it. But then they eventually fucking died out. And does that count for anything? But yeah, at the same time, we've been chopping off the end of boys' penises for the longest time, and we still haven't died. Okay, well, look how long Muslims have been circumcising girls for this long, and they still haven't died out. No, it's because they're doing the bare minimum that you can do while they can still reproduce, and they're still reproducing. So what's the problem with that? Just you could cut off a child's ears, both of them. They'll still be able to hear. So what's the problem? You could gouge out both eyes of a child at birth. They won't be able to see, but they can still live. They'll just be blind. You could amputate every part of a human being's body, and technically they'll still be able to live. But for how long? Yeah, ask the Aztecs how long they were able to survive fucking chopping people's heads off and shit.
You can actually survive getting your stomach removed.
And yeah, this is where traditionalism and progressivism should actually come together in something resembling a happy medium. Like, some traditions exist because they have a track record, but some traditions are just bullshit that have been going on because they happen to have existed, and some progressivism only exists because people want change for the sake of change, and that doesn't have a track record at all. By the way, you don't do any change just for the sake of change.
Yeah, in fact, it's reasonable to say, because we've been doing this for a long time, is neither a rational reason to keep doing something when there is evidence that it should be stopped, or to stop doing something when there is no evidence that other evidence that it.
And this becomes particularly fucked up when we're still doing a tradition and we're still calling it progressive, like feminism. We've only been doing it for 100 years, but people keep saying, well, we've been doing this for 100 years and it hasn't killed us yet, and so let's keep doing it. No, like 100 years is nothing. 100 years is only half of what it takes. It's only most of what it takes to fucking kill a species. Like, either of these avenues can be a way to destroy society, but to call it one thing and then to call it another thing, to like introduce something out of left field, so to speak, and then to say that we've always been doing this. Like, yeah, that's the fastest way to kill a civilization. Like, let's do this because we've never done this, and then let's claim we're doing this because we've always been doing this. Yeah, that's the stuff of the devil, and that's the quickest way to kill everyone as fast as possible. So let's not do that. Let's maybe not do that, ladies and gentlemen.
In the meantime,
and on that note,
See, she goes on. She doesn't talk about any of the things that have happened to men and boys. She doesn't talk about who's committing the violent crimes against women and girls that she's talking about. She just gives a few examples that out of context, an example like that out of context is essentially just an emotional appeal. Not because the crime itself wasn't bad, but because she's not giving you any reason why that's connected to what she said before, or why it's evidence of anything to do with the people that she's trying to condemn. Right? she's mentioning that 1 in 20 adults commits a violent act against women and girls, but she's not providing a chain of connection to demonstrate that it's because there are men on Reddit talking about custody issues and due process rights. But she goes on. This summer, a man has been charged with slaughtering his ex-girlfriend, her mother, and sister with a crossbow. Charged. That's not the same as conviction, by the way. 3 little girls were killed and 10 others stabbed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance. A female care worker was killed in a knife attack in Greater Manchester. An 11-year-old girl was put in a headlock in is that Leicester? Leicester Square, and stabbed 8 times. Don't let me tell you that English is my first language. Police believe the man accused of the crime had never met her. A care worker, by the way, that's what I do. That's in the UK, I would be called a carer, which I think is a better title. Here in the US, I'm called a direct support professional, which is pretentious as fuck, and I hate it. But I'm still going to do the job because I like that part. But then she follows that up with, but today radicalization begins on the internet. I wanted to meet in real life the men who post misogyny online to understand their hatred. And next week we will start with this paragraph about Alex, who, again, does not at all look to me to be typical of the posters of the men's rights subreddit. But it looks like she went outside of that subreddit to look for men to represent the subreddit. So clearly this woman is, one of the honest establishment media. We did have one super chow. Meredith G gave us $5. Said HBR Talk 389, honey for the Badgers. We did not have any super chats that I saw. I hope I didn't miss any here. I'm just gonna scroll back really quick, and I still don't see any super chats. So we didn't get any super chats or any paid Rumble rants. So there isn't anything else that I need to read off. But I will say, Bakazu in the normally the special chat, but the special crowd hasn't been here. Pointed out that one of the attackers from one of the stories I mentioned, was an immigrant, a foreigner. It doesn't surprise me. Probably all of them, right? Man of unspecified ethnicity, because she can't say that it's one of the people labeled refugees that have been committing crimes. And I mean, I know people in government in the UK are dumb, but they can't possibly fail to notice that the information that they're trying to deny to their own people has spread around the world, and we're all aware of it. We can all see it happening, and they're not fooling anyone. Just saying.
I only wish they weren't fooling anyone, but they're fooling a whole fucking bunch of people.
They're fooling the people they can hide information from by controlling the availability of that information. But they don't control the availability of information here in the United States.
Yeah. Because you all have access to X.
Yep.
Some of you have access to X. There are as many people in the United States who have access to X than there are people in the UK in general. And because there's a contingency
and Discord.
Yeah.
And because there's a contingency of people in the UK who don't look at X because the TV has assured them that it's full of a bunch of right-wing racists. Those people just keep watching the BBC, assuming that they're being told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah. And there's also the The fact that if people from the UK talk about what's going on in the UK, they get arrested.
Yep.
Whereas they're not going to come here and arrest me. They're not even going to try. If they did try, it would be a fuck around and find out moment. And I wouldn't even have to make it so. With that said, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to all of my co-hosts for talking about this uncomfortable subject with me. Not that incels are uncomfortable, but that the people's social attitudes toward them and the way that the media lies about them is fucking uncomfortable. Pisses me off. And thanks to everybody who works in the background, make HBR Talk happen, especially Brian, who is, again, doing pretty much all of the background work at this point. Good night, all.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.